Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 17 of the Capitalist Corner. I am Mark Pellegrino, your host and chairman of the American Capitalist Party. I'm accompanied by my esteemed co-host and co-chair of the American Capitalist Party, Michael Liebowitz. How are you doing today, Michael?
I'm actually doing fantastic. When this is over, I'm headed out to Boston to a Red Sox game. First one I've been to in about 35 years, I think.
Nice. So that'll be fun. Baseball is fun. Yes, it's springtime, so technically it's the beginning of baseball.
Yes, I haven't followed the Red Sox in probably 7 years, but hey, it'll still be fun.
You gonna have a hot dog or two?
Oh, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Whole thing. I love that. I love I'm not a fan of baseball per se, but I'm a fan of the atmosphere, the vibe. You know, somebody walking down the aisle, get your peanuts, throwing it down to you. You know, as you pass the money.
Do they still do that?
Hey, well, that goes to show you how long it's been since I've been to a game. Yeah,
that might be a boomer reference.
That might be what?
A boomer reference.
Well, maybe some of our younger guests can tell us if they still do stuff like that, because to me, man, that's part of the ambiance of playing baseball. That's all of that great stuff. Get your red hots, I love that stuff. Well, you know what? Now that I think about it, Dodger Stadium is all spruced up, and they got bougie food there now, and it's not just about Dodger dogs and grilled dogs. It's about health food.
Fenway is still the original Fenway Park.
That is a bucket list park to go to. I think anybody who has a bucket list has Fenway Park on their bucket list, even if they're not a baseball fan. I mean, I do.
Well, you should go next time you're in town.
I will. So we got a couple of issues here to deal with that are somewhat depressing to me. I think anybody who loves liberty will find them depressing. But the MAGA movement, or the MAHA movement, which is Make America Healthy Again, is screaming all kinds of love for these new regulations that are coming down the pipe from the Health and Human Services Department, and their esteemed leader, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. You couldn't find a more status cat than this guy, but he wants a number of things to go into effect immediately with respect to food products. All kinds of petroleum-based dyes are supposed to be eliminated from food products by 2026. So that gives them about a year or so to retool their industries and get these dyes out of the food chain. Now, let's sort of. His reason for doing this is because apparently they've been correlated. He says linked, I say correlated, which is not necessarily causation, to neurobehavioral disorders, ADHD, which we've been seeing increasing in droves. No other cause except this nutritional cause for these neurobehavioral disorders, according to him, or at least he doesn't seem to posit any other cause. So there's a number of dyes that have to go out for the interests of the best interests of the common man, the health of the people. Now, Michael, I don't know if you know this, but how long have these dyes been in our foods?
I don't know, a long time. I don't know how long.
I don't know specifically how long either, but I probably grew up with them too. Now, I was weird, fortunate enough to be weird at 15. I didn't eat crappy food. I hated candy. I didn't like soda, so I didn't do any of that stuff. I was sort of a healthy guy. When my mom bought me ice cream, I was like, you got to buy me the all natural ice cream. I was that weird. Okay, I was sort of that guy. So I don't know that I was exposed a lot to this stuff, but a lot of my friends ate this stuff, and they seem fairly normal. Their behavioral issues are not crazy off the grid. I think there are other causes that go into these behavioral issues, but let's just talk about whose responsibility it is to regulate food. Is it the government's responsibility to regulate food?
No, it's not. Now, the problem with these cases, as far as I can tell, is you can always make the argument that, well, if parents are abusing their children, then the government should step in, right? So obviously, if parents are strangling their children, beating them with coat hangers and locking them in the closet, the government should step in. And then it becomes a matter of, well, where do you find that line? Well, the line is not to be found at food, right? And even if that were the case, you could make a case. Well, if it can be proven that the parents fed a kid something that made him unhealthy or her unhealthy, I wouldn't even sanction that. But nonetheless, it's a far cry from what they want to do and just ban these substances. It boggles my mind that the conservative movement, or what's left of it, or I don't even know what to call it, the crazies, these people, it used to be free trade, get the government out of our lives. Now it's make sure the government's going to make us eat healthy. They're going to get the poison out of our food. They're going to fix the trade. Do you remember how hard they went at Michelle Obama when Michelle Obama wanted to make sure that there was healthy food in schools? That wasn't that long ago.
Yeah, and that's in public schools, by the way, where kids are getting the bottom of the barrel nutrition by the government, which is, of course, another thing we're going to deal with in another topic, uh, public schools. Now, so we don't think it's appropriate for the government to regulate food, necessarily the ingredients in food. I think it's the personal responsibility of the parents to pay attention to that. And we think that in a capitalist society, there would be all kinds of private organizations, information organizations that would spring up that have an interest in giving you the right information with respect to food. In other words, they wouldn't be bought off by the conglomerates and trying to push the propaganda of the conglomerates forward, as they did with the food pyramid. Sorry, but the food industry that had all the lobbyists in government were able to push forward this food pyramid that precipitated a health crisis in the United States of America. So many of these crises are caused by the American government. It's the buyer of the food product, the parent of the children, who is responsible for making sure their children ingest good food. What does that mean? Well, it means you got to do the work. You got to do the work. You can't expect daddy government to take your responsibility for you. In other words, this is just another way for the government to rob people of moral agency, and people willingly do it because they don't want to put in the work. If you're a parent, you got to do your homework with respect to food for your children. You just got to. That's part of what it means to be a conscientious parent. So if I were king, there would be no Food and Drug Administration. There would be no Health and Human Services Department. This would be taken up by private agencies who inform people. And of course, the best ones with the best reputations would rise to the top, as they do in every market. And those would be the ones that you rely on for your sources of information. Do you disagree, or you agree with that?
No, I do agree. And I can just imagine if Biden had been doing this, the uproar that would have come from the right. And they would have been right to have an uproar about it. This is simply not the government's job, but increasingly, and it just seems to get worse and worse, people want the government more and more involved in their lives. I actually heard this morning, and I don't even know what the topic was. I was listening to local news on the radio while I was driving, and a state senator was talking about people, and she said, these people cannot just be left on their own. I'm going to help them. As if people can't make their own decisions and aren't capable of doing things on their own without the state senator to come to their rescue and help them out and guide them. It's such a goddamn patronizing view, and it's such contempt for what, the common man or your regular Joe or whatever slang you want to put. But I do think that you're neglecting that the elites, the experts, and the establishment are all conspiring together to make you want to eat these dyes, and the MAHA movement is coming to rescue you from them.
Oh, I missed that. Yeah, thank Yeah, because they want us to have ADHD and neurobehavioral issues because it makes us less capable, more childlike, and then they could take control over us. I didn't see that coming. You know what? I think if we start pushing that line, we might be able to get the same views as Candace Owens.
Oh no.
Oh God, we don't want her audience. Stay away from us, Candace Owen audience. Stay away from us. We don't like flat earthers. But I wanted to say something in the final part of this article by a food blogger named Vani Hari. She says something that says more about her psychology than anything else, and more about the psychology of many of the American people. If you want to be honest, the food activist blogger Vani Hari, who has run campaigns around ingredients transparency against food companies for more than a decade. Now, that's not bad. I mean, taking the law to these food companies that are acting in bad faith and putting poisonous ingredients in foods. That's what citizens could do, and they could blog about it and give us information about it. That to me is good so far. She said Kennedy's efforts are a win for American parents. Are they really? She says, quote, I never thought I'd see the day when the FDA actually did this, Harry told USA Today. I had lost faith in my government leaders, and now it's been restored. That's scary. The FDA, that was a Freudian slip. The FDA is no longer sleeping at the wheel. I want the government to be sleeping at the wheel when it comes to my food. I want them to be sleeping at the wheel when it comes to building, when it comes to entrepreneurship, when it comes to getting a job, when it comes to keeping a job, when it comes to my wage, when it comes to 99% of the things the government likes to interfere with. I want them sleeping at the wheel because they have no business doing it. This isn't a win for parents. It's not a win for parents. It's a win for government power. Once again, it's a win for stealing moral agency from parents. Look, if you have kids, you have to take care of them. And that is
it's a revolutionary idea.
It's a revolutionary idea today. Look, I'm no expert in this, so I don't claim to be, but nor is Robert Kennedy. He correlates behavioral issues, neurobehavioral issues with these diet problems, which no doubt some of this does figure into issues that children are having. But I remember helping my stepdaughter with a history class, or all of her history homework, and there was no uniting factors in her history. She was learning history as a set of discrete facts, completely disconnected from one another. And this sort of went across the board with every topic that she was learning in school. There was no integration. I cannot help but think that does something to a child's brain. When you can't integrate pieces into wholes, when you can't see the one, the many, when you can't properly file away information, it does something to you when you can't integrate information properly. On top of that, children are more relying on visual mediums now. They get screens. They look at screens and images and quick images, and so they're grappling with concepts on a written page is almost foreign to them. I remember, again, she's going to an Ivy League school right now getting her master's degree. I don't think she could read Madame Bovary. I don't think she could read Henry James. The concepts are simply too dense. I don't know that she could get through a page of it. And I don't mean this as an insult against her. I mean it as a slap against the anti-conceptual way in which students are teaching children nowadays. Because concentration comes naturally to children, believe it or not. Montessori demonstrated this when she brought a teacher in who was interested in the Montessori system. There was a child reading. I don't know if you know this story. She picked the child up while it was reading, moved it to another section of the room, and the child never broke concentration once. This is a matter of like slamming children into a one-size-fits-all curricula when their brains are developing in different ways, and smashing them into ideological-based curriculum and into spaces where they're forced to conform to things that to ideals, to things that they're just not equipped at the time to deal with. What do you say about that? I mean, that's going a little bit far afoot, and we're going into theoretical territory, but I think this is part of the reason we're seeing kids, in addition to like diagnostic capacities increasing, why we're seeing all this.
I don't know, but this is what I do know. First of all, I don't even want the government at the wheel, sleeping or otherwise.
Thank you.
But there's a very interesting dynamic that's going to come into play with a topic that we're going to be talking about shortly. And that's this idea, like you said, parents should be the ones in control of what their children eat. They should be the ones that get to choose. Now, in the upcoming article we're going to be discussing, the parents want the choice. They want to be able to have their kids opt out of classes of teaching transgender studies or, whatever, things of that nature. And it reminds me of, I don't know, maybe a year, maybe 2 years ago, I interviewed the head of the local Moms for Liberty chapter. And she said that parents should be able to choose what their children learn. They shouldn't have to learn about trans stuff or DEI stuff or critical race theory, whatever it was at the time that they were up in arms about. And I agreed with her. And I said, okay, would you allow parents that opt out of history class or math class? She said, no, 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 no. They have to learn that stuff. And I said, well, hold on a second. You're saying that you want parents to have choice, but that's not really what you want. What you really want is to ban these books from schools. Because if you were really for choice, you would say parents should be able to send their kids to whatever schools they want, or they should be able to homeschool them. This wouldn't even be an issue, but you're not saying that. You're saying some of the parents in these schools should get to choose what the curriculum is, even if other parents don't want that. And this is what this reminds me of. The government must decide on one hand what additives can be put in foods, but on the other hand, no, parents have the right to take their kids out of classes that we don't like. Only certain classes that we don't like, however. And it's just the hypocrisy is monumental. The lack of integration that you were just talking about is clear as day. And it's a real problem that goes beyond just the issues that we're here talking about. Because when people don't have an integrated view, it's deuces wild, right? Anything goes. I remember when I first came across, it was in prison in a introduction to philosophy class, and I came across Aristotle's principle of non-contradiction. And it struck me like a lightning bolt. The idea that two contradictions can't both be true. And I resolved in myself that I would eliminate all contradictions from my thinking. Now, I wasn't going to do that simply by, the cognitive dissonance where I just expunge one. It was a matter of actually paying attention to reality and seeing which is true and which is not true. But so many folks out there just don't have this desire to do so. So it doesn't matter that on one hand, they're preaching about government is out of control. And on the other hand, they're saying, yes, we need tariffs, or they're saying we need to cut regulations, but yes, we need to have the government step in and deal with food dyes. And on the flip side of that, I mean, I'm kind of picking on the right here, but the left, all my life, I've heard them talking about freedom and civil rights and civil liberties, but yet they couldn't care less about property rights and economic freedom. Evidently, people are only wise decision makers when it comes to voting in Democrats. They're not wise decision makers when it comes to what they spend their money on or where to get jobs or whom to hire.
Exactly. It just shows that in the public sphere, where everybody owns something, nobody does, in essence, and it incentivizes a type of civil war, where every group is going to try to assert its dominance in that sphere. And that's what we're seeing in the public school system, with these people on the right now trying to assert their dominance over the people on the left who have had dominance in the area now for a few decades. Nobody is really for choice. As much as the right says they're for choice, they're really not for choice. I mean, one of the things Robert Kennedy said was that all these additives are being put in food without consent. Well, okay, if you are all about consent, my friend, then why don't you dismantle the Health and Human Services Department, dismantle the FDA and every alphabet agency that's under your purview, and allow parents the real choice. Let private oversight organizations come up and let parents choose themselves. That's and they will if they're empowered to do so. The problem is that they've been disempowered from doing so, and have enjoyed being disempowered from doing so, and have atrophied as a result. If you don't exercise a muscle for a while, that includes your brain and your self-responsibility, you're going to lose the capacity for both in the end. And so, look, this idea of pushing for dominance in the public sphere bleeds over into this other case called Mahmoud versus Taylor. This is
Hold on one second. I just want to give you an interesting nugget about RFK. So there's some disagreement about whether there was actually a promise made or not. Whatever, that's not really relevant. But Angela McArdle, who was the head of the Libertarian Party, Trump, according to some people, promised there would be a libertarian in his cabinet. And he has RFK Jr. RFK Jr. is a member of the Libertarian Party. He's obviously doesn't have libertarian views, but McCardle said, "Oh, we got our libertarian in the cabinet. He's a lifelong member of the Libertarian Party." And it just goes to show why we need really another example of why we need a really great new party that's going to stand up for individual rights and individual liberty, also known as capitalism, right? I mean, and there is this new party. Am I right?
This party does exist. It is called the American Capitalist Party. And if you go to americancapitalistparty.org, you can donate to this party so that we can have a wider reaching voice and get people elected to city councils, to state senators, and at the federal level, so that we could start changing the tenor of the argument. Because clearly, Robert F. Kennedy, lifelong libertarian, is not on the side of liberty the way the libertarians claim to be. So let's get a real pure principled voice in there that's really fighting for the Constitution, which means, folks, he's fighting for you. That's what it means for. If a person is fighting to actually uphold the Constitution, restrain the force of government, they are fighting for you. All the rhetoric of the left and the right, being for the people and all that crap, is just that. It's rhetoric. It doesn't mean anything. It's just meant to reel you in, to catfish you into voting for them. It's a bunch of BS. We are the party of the people because we are the party of the Constitution. So back to Mahmoud versus Taylor. I'm going to read this straight out because it's pretty short. Did you text this to me, or is this actually the article? In the form of
I think what I did was I copied it and sent it to you. I believe it's from what's the name of that news source? 1440 that I get in the morning.
Wow, you get a lot of news sources. You go all over the place. I've got like 3.
I do. I have a variety. I try to go to.
That's very good. That's good. It's like having different colored vegetables on your plate. It's supposed to be the best thing for you. Mahmoud versus Taylor. I'm going to read this straight out, folks, and then
it's from 1440, Mark.
1440.
Yeah.
I'll remember that for 10 minutes. Mahmoud versus Taylor. The Supreme Court heard arguments yesterday in a case that will determine whether parents of public school children have a constitutional right to opt their kids out of lessons featuring LGBTQ characters and themes. I mean, just off the face of this is absurd, but let's continue because the public sector is absurd. The challenge comes from a group of Muslim, Catholic, and Ukrainian Orthodox parents who say Maryland's Montgomery County Public Schools violated their First Amendment rights by refusing to allow exemptions from lessons they believe conflict with their religious views. The district, the most religiously diverse in the U.S., introduced the books in 2022 to reflect its diverse student body. Clearly, it did not reflect its diverse student body. Initially allowing opt-outs, but later ending the policy, citing disruptions to classroom instruction, or should I say indoctrination. Lower courts ruled in favor of the district. Now, this blows my mind. The lower courts ruled in favor of the district, finding exposure to the books does not coerce children to abandon their religious beliefs, and that parents remain free to teach their values at home. The Supreme Court decision is expected later this year. Separately, a federal appeals court is weighing the Pentagon's ban on transgender individuals from serving openly in the military. That's a complete non sequitur, but I do want to deal with that. But the fact that this lower court says it does not coerce children to abandon their religious beliefs, the entire system of coercive education, of compulsory education, is a coercive system to begin with. Now, how do we sell this package of voluntary education? How do we sell this package of private schooling, a complete private schooling, to a public that's been so inured to the concept that the state somehow has responsibility to educate those our kids, and that if it were all privatized, the poor would not be educated?
Well, the first thing you have to do, I think, is understand where we are now. Because whenever I get into these discussions, it seems it ends up being that there's this assumption. It's this new ideal state education that's being assumed that I have to argue against. But that's not what we have. What we really have are some pretty bad numbers, and I don't have them, at my fingertips now. But compared to other countries, America is doing worse in math, science, that sort of thing. So the education system is not very
Can
good.
I interrupt here for a second? Sorry,
Sure.
I don't want to derail your mojo, but I believe I remember a statistic that in Maryland itself, where this case is taking place, not one student can read at grade level.
Okay. So I don't know, but that would be terrible, right? So that's what we're talking about. So that's the start. So then we have to say, let's just look at the morality of force. And I always put it to somebody like this. If I had children and I couldn't afford to get them something, medical, whatever, healthcare, computers, whatever, and I went to my neighbor and I put a gun to my neighbor's head and said, listen, I need money to send my kids to one of these things, like I said, healthcare, school, whatever. And my neighbor gives me the money and I send my kid to the school, and then the government comes and says, wait a second, you can't do that. They arrest me. Clearly, I violated the law, but I've also initiated force against another human being. I've committed a robbery, right? But somehow people don't get that it's exactly what the government is doing. Is if the government is using force to make some people pay for other people's children to go to school, to force people to have their children indoctrinated into the type of education that the government wants them to have. So you've got a situation where the government is behaving both immorally and in a way that would be illegal for anybody else to do other than the government, right? So now you deal with the question of, well, what if parents just don't send their kids to school or can't afford to send their kids to school? Well, okay, first things, as Barbara Brandon said, nothing is going to stop the questioner from helping such children in a free society, right? You will be perfectly free to set up your charity, to do whatever you want to make sure kids get educated. That's the first thing. Secondly, in a private system, you would have so many more options for the types of schools that you could go to. Now, obviously, a rich kid is likely to be able to get a better education than a poor kid. Guess what? That's already the case, right? Yes. That's already the case. So you can't imagine a system where everybody's getting top-notch education and then say, oh, but if we institute this system, we're going to veer from that. No, we have a lousy system that's immoral and unjust, and we're going to replace it with one that is moral, is just, and will also be competitive, which normally leads to better results. Now, can I know with absolute certainty that that's going to happen? No. The nature of freedom is there's risk entailed. I can't guarantee anything, but I can use reason and I can go by history to say that things will be better. And people are certainly free to innovate, to start systems that would educate poor children. There's all kinds of ways that this can be done. Private tutors, charter schools, whatever, right? So I think we have to start with identifying, just to sum up, Mark, we need to start by identifying the nature of the current system, that it's immoral and lousy, say that a private system would be moral, and a private system would be far more likely to produce better education for the vast majority of kids. And it's unlikely to leave many children without education.
I mean, let's face it, where do you see the most innovation in any industry? It's in the least regulated areas of society. Even about 15 years ago, so 20 years ago, I started getting notices of a great books club that started, where you could actually buy these books and lectures simultaneously by award-winning professors. So if I wanted to say, look at Russian literature and suddenly become an expert at Russian literature.
Are you talking about the great courses?
Great courses, sorry, yeah, great courses.
Yeah, I used to get those advertisements in prison. I always wanted to participate and never did.
They were great. They're great. So just about any course you want, you could get from the great courses. This is 15, 20 years ago. Great courses, and you have award-winning professors discussing all of these works that you read in advance, and then you go chapter by chapter with the professor, and you have a full-on college-level discourse about this. Now they have apps for languages, and then when Duolingo started, for example, 20 years ago or so, it was a very primitive app. It wouldn't really help you learn how to speak the other language, but it has become so sophisticated now that you really can learn to speak another language through these apps, whether it's Pimsleur or Rosetta Stone or Duolingo. There's 100 different kinds of apps now that help you learn a language, and you don't have to pay an expensive college fee to go and learn French. You can actually learn it from these apps for very little, for I don't know, $5 a month or whatever it is that it costs to do these things. Now, and since COVID, when people started exiting their children from the school and homeschooling them, more innovations have been coming up with respect to how schooling can be accomplished. There's a lot of remote learning. I mean, my stepkid goes to Columbia University. I think the belly of the beast, but she doesn't live in upstate. She doesn't live in New York. She doesn't have to go into Harlem to go to Columbia. She does it straight from her home. She does it remotely. All this stuff is are possibilities that open up. Hold on. There you go, buddy. Are possibilities.
Hi, Frankie.
Hey guys, he's gonna go wander around now. All of those are innovative possibilities that open up that make education exponentially cheaper. You don't need your kid to be socialized. You need them to be individuals who can think for themselves. That's what you need. I was going to say something else to what you said, and then now I think I've gone on too long and I've forgotten what it was.
Can't help you. I don't know what's happening.
You don't know what's going on inside this brain of mine.
No, I don't. I don't. Ask Frankie. Maybe Frankie knows.
Frankie has dementia, so he doesn't know. So yes, we think the public alternative is terrible on every level. It's immoral, and that's why it's leading to the results it's leading to. Anxious, screwed up children who have zero attention span, who are becoming also violent, intolerant. All these are symptoms of a social malaise, I think, that is being transmitted through the public school system, and would probably be much improved if children could learn properly and integrate concepts properly. And we don't need the government in charge of our minds. We don't need the government in charge of our food. We need to be in charge of both. It's your responsibility to feed yourself, folks. It's your responsibility to teach yourself and become an independent, functioning human being in society. All right, let's take the burden off the government. All right, and put it upon ourselves, because it's good. It makes you feel good too, right, Michael? Doesn't it feel good to have self-control?
It does. I wouldn't call it a burden, though.
Well, no, I'm joking. With sarcastic.
No, I do. I find it actually liberating. It can be scary to be responsible for oneself, to take responsibility, but it's not a bad fear. It's like the fear I'd imagine that some people get from skydiving. I won't go skydiving because the fear is too strong, but there are good fears to face, and we need to be willing to come out of our comfort zones in life if we're willing to, to grow, if we want to grow. So yeah, individual responsibility is the way. Another person cannot do my thinking for me. The only thing they can do is force me to comply, and I don't really want that.
Agreed. Now, did you plug in directly to the internet because you're having some issues?
I did plug in directly to the internet, and maybe I don't know. Is anybody else seeing me with issues, or is it just Mark with the issues that I'm having? Let's blame Mark. If we will always blame Mark.
I'm used to it.
There will be no responsibility on my part. We will blame Mark. But yes, I am plugged in directly to the internet. Am I still having issues?
You're choppy on my end. I don't know if you're choppy on other people's ends.
Oh wow, that sucks.
But
I hope not. It says I'm okay there.
If Nasir says it, it's probably true.
It is. So you've just caused us now a good minute and a half, 2 minutes of this conversation about choppiness that wasn't taking place. So what's happening here?
But then I was going to go off on a little course here because you said blame it on Pellegrino.
No, hold on a second here. What if you were filming a movie and all of a sudden you started accusing everybody of it being choppy? And you say, no, it's choppy. This is choppy. The director's choppy.
I just did shoot a little short film for some friends of mine, and it was choppy. It's so badly edited. I have to talk to somebody about it. Thanks for reminding me, because I'll see him today, and he'll kill me.
Maybe you're throwing around false accusations.
Oh, I'm seeing it right before my eyes. It's happening. But as far as blaming me goes, look at Jerry. Everybody's against me. Crystal clear, Jerry says. We're getting so I'm getting I get hate all the time. I had an anti-Pellegrino site just taken down.
I saw that.
Luckily, my fans did. My friends and fans had it taken down because they were so abusive. The things they were saying about me. So I'm used to it, my friend. I have developed the skin of a reptile.
I need that. I need an anti-Liebowitz site to pop up. Give me some promotion. There's this guy from Connecticut. So let me tell you a little background. When I was incarcerated, I was a regular on the show, the Todd Feinberg Show. A lot of people loved me on the show, but there's a group that was kind of jealous. They were the callers, and they wanted more time on the air. They wanted more attention. They didn't frame it this way, but it was obvious, right?
Yeah.
So some of this followed me even when I came home. So I've got this guy who's always commenting on my page, saying dumb, idiotic things. First, he accused me of plagiarism because I used the term rational egoist. He says that's plagiarism. He doesn't understand it's a common term, to which the philosopher Michael Humer came on my page, and he says, oh my God, he said, there's so many instances of plagiarism. He said, have you, for instance, seen how many books there are called Basic Physics? Oh my Lord, right? So anyway, so I was posting today how the people who were promoting this stupid hand with the tattoo MS-13 photoshopped onto the picture, I said, these are the enemies of rationality. So this guy comes on and he mentions my friend Reese Hopkins, who's a host in Connecticut on a radio show. And he says, and he's a Trumper. Reese and I argue all the time about Trump, all the time, right? So he says, yeah, well, and he tags him into the discussion. He says, yeah, well, Reese Hopkins posted this. Do you think he's an enemy of rationality? And I responded, I said, listen, I said, if Reese did post this, then yes, he's being irrational. I said, do you understand that I would have no problem saying that to him? And I then further told him, I said, look, do you know that Reese is my friend and you're just a pissant that's trying to make trouble, right? So I told him, I did as I normally do. When I get tired of these guys, I said, listen, put a stream, we'll debate it, and that'll be it. Like, I don't want to keep dealing with this nonsense. He responds to me and he says, yeah, I don't really care what you think anyway. And I said, well, for someone who doesn't care what I think, you sure as hell spend a lot of time on my page commenting, right? Like, how much time do I spend on your page? So my point is, that's about the closest I have to an anti-Liebowitz movement out there. It's not much, but maybe we'll build it up. We'll get some more people involved.
We'll build it up.
We need to.
Yeah,
I need that.
We'll build it up.
I've said a lot of things that piss people off. There's a lot to hate, folks. So if somebody out there, you really detest me, you can be the anti-Liebowitz, some kind of movement like that. And I won't allow people to take it down. Get it up.
Well, okay.
You look dumbfounded, Mark. You look dumbfounded at the moment.
I was dumbfounded because you said something at the end there. I won't allow people to take it down.
No, it wasn't a dig towards you, Mark. It wasn't a dig. I'm just saying, like, that's what happened there, but that's not going to happen in my case. I want this.
Well, now be careful what you wish for, my friend, because this will probably happen, and of course I will support you and get your back. I'll get you 6 when these accounts start.
I'm a winner. According to Katrin Kohler, the anti-Mark page was talking about me as well. I'm a hangers on.
Right, they did.
What did they say? What did they say?
They lumped you in a category of 3 for me. So wait, let me see. Katrin might be able to remind me. So I had defended a sex offender. I befriended a murderer. I think that was supposed to be you. And Katrin might be able to tell me there was another one. I wished a drone strike on a journalist.
That wasn't true. So both things actually aren't true, because I'm, of course, not a murderer.
Right. None of it's true. The sexual offender, the person who accused this guy on social media of doing inappropriate things to her at a photo shoot at an event, came out a year and a half later after she ruined his career and sent him into retirement. She came out a year and a half later on Twitter and said she lied about the entire event.
Oy vey.
And all I did with the guy, who actually respects me because I was the only person to stand up for him, I said, look, stop trying this guy in social media. If you have a real complaint, take it to the police, put it down in a report, and take him to court and prove it in a court of law. So I was just arguing for the thing we're arguing for Garcia, due process. Stop doing what the Republicans are doing now to Garcia and smearing this guy's reputation and life all over social media to get public sympathy on their side. Look, folks, it doesn't matter if a guy's a bad guy. He might be a bad guy. Prove it now in court, for crying out loud.
Yes. Robert Acer says about this topic, good thought. He says, I've worried in the past that I don't get much pushback, which meant I don't have much reach. But fortunately, I have been denounced several times this year. Yes, he has. Somebody actually referred to Robert and said he and his ilk, to which I responded, I am happy to be counted amongst Robert's ilk.
I'm happy to be in as well. I'd like to know how that comment was completed, though. He and his ilk want poor people dead, or what?
Basically, what it is we just want the terrorists all to, bring the terrorists in and get them all dressed up in transsexual outfits and have them teaching in schools. I guess.
Yeah, that's what we want.
When you want due process, that's the automatic conclusion.
You know what? And ironically, I heard somebody on Fox News saying this without satire. Okay, saying what the left is arguing for is about process. Yes, that is exactly what they're arguing for. And I'm sorry I'm in alliance with them on this point, because I know they don't take it seriously themselves. But yes, we're arguing about process because it matters.
Yeah. You know where else it says something about process? In the 5th and 14th Amendments to the United States Constitution, which the right used to claim to care about.
Yeah, hello. Yeah. So clearly when they get in power, look, Washington was right. He understood how scary parties were, which is why he attempted, I think, to really avoid alliance with any party, even though he went with the Federalists and Hamilton. Unfortunately, he was afraid of parties, as many of the founders were, because they understood that before long you became a party man, and your interests were more about defending and protecting the party and pushing the party's interests forward. And they were no longer the Constitution of the United States. They were no longer really for the betterment of the people. But at the end of this article, there's a non sequitur here that I wanted to discuss with you because I think it's important. Separately, Federal Appeals Court is weighing the Pentagon ban on transgender individuals from serving openly in the military. I guess they can serve covertly in the military, but I don't know how that works once they get into the showers. But what do you think about this?
Well, you notice something there that's entailed. There's an implicit assumption. I guess all assumptions are implicit, but I don't know, maybe not. Doesn't matter right now. But implicit in that is that any opposition to anything transgender, it's all bigotry. Right. So I don't want my kids to learn this stuff in school, which ought to be my right, is equated with these people shouldn't be allowed to serve in the military. But they're really two different things, because not teaching transgenderism to my kids protects my rights if I don't want them, and my children's rights if I don't want them to learn that. When you discriminate against transgenders, keeping them out of the military, now you're violating their rights. But the article meshes them together.
Yeah, interesting. Well, it seemed like a non sequitur to me. It was like meshing together bologna and jelly. It didn't go together. So, are you saying, Michael, that a transgender can serve in the military if they meet the physical requirements, and if they are stone killers that can protect our lives from bad guys? Are you saying that they should serve in the military?
I do think so. And my personal view on this, whether it be women, whomever, is if you can meet the physical and psychological requirements necessary to serve, you should be allowed in. It's that simple. If you can't, you ought not be allowed in because you're going to put other people in danger. Now, there's this sort of workaround that is attempted now by saying, well, but the transgenders, they're mentally ill, so they shouldn't be allowed to serve. Well, first of all, if you really believe they were mentally ill, then why not show them more compassion, generally speaking, even outside of this context, which all the people calling them mentally ill, I don't see that type of compassion.
Do you think that part of that, though, let me play devil's advocate for a second. First of all, I want to say I agree with you. If you fit the psychological and physical requirements for the job, then especially in a job like the military, I don't give I don't give a fuck how you identify. If you can carry me out of the trench when I'm injured, I love you. You're my friend. If you got my six when I'm in trouble, I love you. You're my friend. Yeah, that's all I care about. And all I care about as you in the military is your capacity to defend our country against the bad guys. That's all that should be required of people going into the military. All this other crap is total and utter nonsense.
Right. Now there's an argument, right, that says, well, if they're in there,
I wanted to push back and play devil.
Oh, go ahead. Okay, go ahead.
Do you think that some of this resistance to compassion for the trans side has to do with the militancy which the trans issue has been put forward? So it's not only that they're saying recognize us as a group, they're saying accept us as a group. They're calling for other people to change their lives, change their property, even manipulate themselves in order to cater to the whims of some of these people. And frankly, it has become a bit of a social contagion where a real phenomenon that exists has now become a thing that people can attach themselves to, a new victim group that has moral stature that gives them, a feeling of social power, and that they are now abusing that in the world, and people on the right are responding to that. What do you think?
Well, yes, I think that I agree with everything you said. The problem is you can sit back, right, and do a social analysis and say, yes, it's predictable. When you have this will follow. But you also have to take into consideration that individuals have freedom of will. We have the ability to judge. So I'm able to say, yes, a trans movement that wants to get extra rights for trans people is wrong. I'm able to say there might be, or probably is, some social contagion going on. That doesn't make trans people bad. It doesn't mean that they shouldn't be allowed in public or anything of that nature. Not that anybody's saying they shouldn't be allowed in public. I'm just saying that you can make an analysis that's accurate. You don't have to do what Robert said over here. I love everything to do with transgenderism, or I despise everything and everyone who is in any way affected by transsexuality, as if those are your only two options. They aren't, right? So now there might be an argument out there, for instance, that says, well, if you allow trans people in the military, it's going to be demoralizing to the combatants. It's going to make them uncomfortable, this sort of thing. Now, that might have been true in 1960. But the fact of the matter is, if you talk to young people today, and understand the military, you're 18, you go into the military. These kids, it's not weird to them. It's not strange. They don't look at it the same way that boomers look at it.
Correct.
Right? So I don't think that argument holds much weight. It's a normal thing. There were transgender kids going to school with, friends and family of mine have children, and there were transgender kids in the schools, and none of them thought it was weird. Like, these kids didn't get picked on. There was no, that's odd or anything. It was just the norm. Here, this is what it is. Now, of course, some people will say that's a problem. I personally don't think it's a problem, but some people may say it. But that's irrelevant to the point that we're making about the military. So if you can prove that this is going to cost America a war, well, that'd be a different story. But you can't just assert it and then use your assertion to deprive people of their rights, especially when it's a right to serve in the military.
Well, Pete Hegseth also wants to ban women from combat roles roles in the military.
No, Pete Hegseth should ban himself from using Signal. Why don't we start there?
Yeah, that's definitely true. I think he should also take his proboscis out of Trump's rear. But he's brown nosing up the Sorry, he just appears weak to me. I know they
I'm just laughing that you used proboscis.
this. That is a word, right?
My dogs. You hear my dogs going crazy?
Yeah, my dog doesn't bark anymore. Wait, what was I going to say? Oh, but I was gonna say it seems to me that women in combat roles seems to work perfectly well for Israel. And so I don't see anything wrong with women who meet qualifications and who want to be in combat roles, being in combat roles. I know that the old-fashioned way of looking at things, it's not, and it's not necessarily untrue, is that women are they are the civilizing element of humanity, and they should be, you know, demure and soft and civilizing for, you know, the brutal, savage aspects of man. But you know what? There are some tough women out there. I know a few of them at my jiu-jitsu academy who could, you know, beat the crap out of somebody, a man twice their size. And you know what? If they wanted to go fight in the military, they are totally qualified to do that and should. So anyway, we're outing ourselves, Michael, as a party who likes and embraces every individual, and the only thing we hold them to is the standard of merit. How weird are we? That's so strangely liberal of us.
We are extremely liberal, that we just want people's rights to be protected. So this is what I'm going to ask. I need a special favor from you, Mark, for today.
Yes.
I am going to need you to do for the second day in a row. Well, maybe
Oh, you
not.
are. Oh, no, wait. Now I know what you're.
Well, my dogs are going absolutely mad. Now, what happens is we have 5 of them. So once one starts barking, the others all get wound up.
Okay.
And they just don't shut up. But now it's tapering down. So I might be able to do the capitalist thought of the day for us.
Yeah.
When we get there, we're not quite there yet. I'm just saying, once we get there, I was going to ask you to do it, and then I would do too. But
now, how badly would you bust my balls if I told you, if I gave the same excuse? See, Frankie's walking around in circles.
Oh my God, Frankie doesn't bother anybody. He's this big. I've got 2 pit bulls, an Australian cattle dog. I mean, we got all kinds of things going on out here.
You got a pack. I love that.
Yes, and they're great, but they can be rather annoying at times.
Wow. No, doggies, no annoying. No. Doggies great every time. And everything they do, right, Frankie? Frankie now poos in the house and pees in the house by accident. It's something he used to be.
Oh no, he's doing it on purpose. I'm not going to give personal responsibility.
He's a 126-year-old man. Anything he wants, and after he does it, I clean it up and I kiss him on his little face. That's right, I kiss him on his face. So look, the last article that we're going to do is fairly complicated article. I'm not going to be able to cover really in the 8 minutes left, especially with you doing your capitalist thought of the day at the very end of it, despite your dogs going crazy. But I sympathize totally with the title of this, and they go into hard stats that I don't think we're going to have time to go into today. But I'm just going to posit this out there, and I want you to take part of this and let our audience ruminate on this. The title of this article, it's from the Cato Institute, Cato at Liberty. It was dated April 21st, 2025. Trying to bring back manufacturing jobs is a fool's errand. Now, we have been saying this.
Yes.
Now, Cato's finally saying it. Not that it's taken them a while to realize it, but
I don't know if it's finally. I'm pretty sure they've said this kind of thing before, Mark.
Yes, of course.
Let's not disparage the people at Cato. We've got enough people hating us. We don't need them hating us too.
Love Cato. Cato, we love you. I was just trying to plug our show over here. That's my bad. We love you. We reference you. I read you a lot because you're pretty much the only voice of sanity out there. So why is it stupid to try to bring back manufacturing jobs?
Well, I actually didn't know a lot of what they talked about, and I don't remember all the stats, like you said, but basically for a large portion of the country's history, we've been more of a service economy than a manufacturing economy anyway. And the service jobs have been good. So, good paying, and they also have other benefits as well. But the idea that we have to have manufacturing is an idea probably manufactured by a special class of people that feels that they're entitled to manufacturing jobs. That people that don't think that they have to learn and adjust to a changing world, that the rest of us should just have to suffer and say stuck because they want to hold these jobs. But here's the thing. Contrary to what FDR said, people aren't entitled to a job. You're not entitled to the remuneration you want. Believe me, if we were entitled to the remuneration we want, I wouldn't be making $300 a week doing real estate title searches and nothing for doing this, which is what I love to do. I wouldn't have to wait the 3, 4, 5 years to build my brand to start making money. Why am I not entitled? If the manufacturing people are entitled, I should be entitled. Right. But that's just not reality. That's not the way things go, and nor is it the way things should go. It just isn't. We need a dynamic, free economy. And with a dynamic, free economy, sometimes industries, jobs, they go the way of the dodo. Sorry, people.
Yeah, and what used to happen in those cases is people migrated out of those areas and they went to where the jobs were happening. All right. There was a great migration in the South. There was a migration. To the West when agriculture was drying up, literally in Oklahoma. The Okies moved west to California. Unfortunately, a commie by the name of Steinbeck wrote Grapes of Wrath and puts that in a very terrible light. But it wasn't. And now you get the phenomenon of people waiting in the Rust Belt for, the steel jobs to come back, or the car manufacturing jobs to come back, if they would only come back, instead of, moving out and finding where the work is. That's what people used to do. And that's a good thing. It's a bad thing that now people are waiting for Papa government to fix the situation in such a way as to bring back. What's so funny?
Papa government, is that like Papa Smurf?
Yeah, very much.
Any relation?
Relation, but orange in color and not blue.
Robert said we hear a lot of talk about Cato, but everyone seems to have forgotten the Green Lantern. Shouldn't it be the Green Hornet? Didn't Cato come from the Green Hornet? Am I wrong about that?
No, Cato was the Green Hornet guy. He was Bruce Lee, man. He was.
So why is Robert introducing the Green Lantern?
Maybe Robert knows something that I don't. I assume if Robert says something, he's right, and I'm wrong. So Robert,
I don't know. He and his ilk have been known to be wrong in the past.
They have.
I don't think so. No.
No,
but I can make it up. I can lie sometimes.
Yes. So look, we've been a service economy for a very long time, folks. We have manufacturing. We're indifferent to manufacturing, and capital flows to its most efficient uses. Right. So if manufacturing could be done more efficiently somewhere else, then that's okay. It's okay for you. It's okay for me. What's not okay is these protectionist laws that lock manufacturing jobs into our country where labor costs are much higher. That is going to raise your cost of living. You don't want to raise your cost of living. That lowers your real wage. That lowers your capacity and access to stuff. Then you don't want that. You want to be free. You want to have a higher standard of living. If that's the case, then let these jobs go where they need to go, because you are going to be the beneficiary of it in the end. It's okay.
We
got to have a talk about decoupling from China in an appropriate way, because I feel we're doing it in a way that's sketchy and leading to some real world turmoil. But I do think we need to decouple from them in a number of areas, maybe not necessarily completely, but certainly in a number of areas. And we should talk about how to do that. It's certainly not about taking manufacturing from them and bringing it here.
I got a book from the what was that we went to, Liberty Con. That's all about China. In a while, I'll read it. Let me read it. Let me get more informed about China and what's going on, and then we can have a nice, intelligent discussion about it.
Okay, so I think we've now reached that point.
I got the capitalist thought. It's ready to go.
Okay, do it.
All right. So capitalism ultimately is the system that upholds individual rights. Amongst the individual rights that we have is the right of association, the right of movement also. And today I am going to a Boston Red Sox game with two old friends, guys that I've been friends with since I was a little kid. And to be able to associate with them and to be able to travel with them to go to this baseball game as a free people is an awesome experience. And all of us should never take it for granted. We should appreciate that we're allowed to associate with whom we want. We're allowed to cultivate good friendships and allowed to experience life, even in this restricted freedom that we have. Historically speaking, we are still a free people. And with the help of the American Capitalist Party, we can increase our freedom. And with that, over to you, Mark.
Very well said. I think Robert gave us a new moniker. Make America Free Again. We are the MAHA movement.
The MAHA movement. Awesome.
We're going to steal that from you, Robert, but I'll give you credit wherever we make hats or merch that says MAHA. We're going to put your name right beside it, just so you get credit for coming up with the MAHA movement. All right, folks, this has been episode 16 of the Capitalist Corner.
17.
What?
17.
17. This has been episode. I'm always one off.
Even after I told you?
Dude, come on. I'm an old dude. So this is episode
Boomer Jace.
And guess what? I'm going to ask you tomorrow morning too. What episode are we on? You know it's going to happen. Thank you for watching episode 17 of the Capitalist Corner. Please go to AmericanCapitalistParty.org, donate, and become a member. Become a wave of the future. Become a wave in the MAHA movement, folks. And make sure to follow me on social media if you want to fight, if you want to just show love. I'm open to both. I love both. And follow Michael Liebowitz. And also watch and listen to his show, The Rational Egoist. You'll be smarter for it. And between now and tomorrow, please always remember to check your premises. We'll see you tomorrow. Peace.
Take care.